Yes, please, thank you. Just want to start. Thank you everyone for coming. It's a Monday and a court day, and it's great to see so many faces here. This is a Chavadi event. I've seen some faces who've attended a previous events organized by Chavadi. Thank you for coming again. For those of you who are new, Chavadi is a non-partisan platform. We hope to facilitate interactions and conversations with women litigators. It's a non-judgmental space, and we try and organize events that are of interest to women litigators. Yeah, we have a very diverse and a very senior panel. That's an inside joke. They're not.
We are.
And we are proud to be here with a diversity of experience. I'll just quickly introduce them. Most of you know them. In fact, I think all of you know them. But just quickly, we have Purnima. Purnima Hatti is a founding partner at Samvad Partners. She heads their dispute resolution practice. She has a wide range of experience in commercial and corporate dispute resolution. She's a practicing lawyer. She's also an arbitrator across various institutions. And Purnima also organizes lovely interactions with my favorite children's bookstore called Lightroom Bookstore, where she educates young minds about constitutional values, and she also engages in some storytelling sessions for little minds. Thank you, Purnima, for coming. We have Neeti. Neeti Sachdeva is the Registrar and Secretary General of Mumbai Center for International Arbitration. She's she's worked in the field of international commercial arbitration, both as a private practitioner and also as an administrator facilitating dispute resolution procedure. Incidentally, Neeti was also the first Deputy Registrar of the India chapter of London Center for International Arbitration. Did I get that right?
That's right. London Court.
London Court. I knew it. Neeti also sits as an arbitrator across various disputes. Neeti is our outstation speaker. We thank you for making time and coming here. We have Rahat Afshan. She was a practicing advocate before she wrote the state judicial exams. Then she became a civil judge, and she served in the capacity of a senior civil judge till 2021, when she took voluntary retirement due to personal reasons. She currently is empaneled with the Karnataka Arbitration Conciliation Center, and she sits as an arbitrator across many disputes. Welcome, Rahat. And Manisha Kongovi is a partner at Indus Law Bangalore. She's a part of their dispute resolution team. She's represented multiple clients in diverse domestic and international litigation and arbitration. She specializes in commercial and corporate dispute resolution. Manisha will briefly lay out today's framework and agenda, and then each of our speakers will speak their piece for about 15-20 minutes. Manisha will be in conversation with them, and hopefully will ask them some hard-hitting questions, and we'll throw it open for interaction after that. Yeah, thank you very much. Manisha, over to you. Oh, I will just get that.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Nidhi and Chavadi, for providing such a lovely forum where I think we can discuss topics very freely, express our minds, and enrich ourselves with conversation, while having some nice coffee, tea and snacks. So I think this has been a lovely forum to be a part of. So just to set the context for what we're discussing today, I think sometimes always numbers work better than us. I think all of us have a perceived feeling, yes, that we see that every arbitrator that we're appearing before, I think we will see that 90% of them or more are male, right? But the thought wouldn't have occurred to us, or maybe we think it's normal. But let me just give you a few numbers, because there's very, very little study. Honestly, when we start digging in, there's very little study to see what is women's participation, right? So there's just literally only one report, I think, that was done by the International Council for Commercial Arbitration, okay, which shows that before 2015, the number of, and of course this is a global study, right? This is not India specific. Right? The number of women arbitrators that you'll find pre-2015 was around 3.5%. Now that is amazingly doubled right, between 2015 and 21, where it has become 26.1%. So I think we're on the right path. We're definitely seeing more people engage in free appointment of arbitrators, but the number is still at below 30%, right? Incidentally, and this I can ask the panel also to comment on, that when you see these figures, apparently when you see them as co-arbitrators, the number of female co-arbitrators is very high, which means so long as there is a man on the panel, the number of women can actually increase, right? So, of course, this is the only study that's been officially conducted, but even if you go on the website of the Bangalore Arbitration Center as well as the Mumbai Arbitration Center as well as LCI, you'll see that the number, and I'll give you the numbers as we go on to see that the number of female arbitrators even empaneled, right, is low. There is the act, when we read it, there is absolute freedom in the act to choose whoever your arbitrator is. There is no discrepancy in the language. It's left to the parties to choose who they are. So why is it that whether it's institutional or non-institutional ad hoc arbitration, we find that this freedom somehow, right, doesn't reflect the number of capable women who can act as arbitrators? I think as we go on with the discussion, a few of the things we would like to understand is, one is the causes, because that's how we fix the problem. Second is, as individuals who are sitting here, what can we do better? What can we do to follow this path, to be more involved as arbitrators, right? Let's be clear here that we're not speaking about participating as counsels in arbitration, because that's where the focus has been, I think, in a majority. There's one of the causes that you read about actually is the fact that this is not a big problem for them to fix. Right now, they're still in the process of popularizing arbitration and making it common and, making sure that it enters all contracts, etc., etc. So the focus is not really on fixing the gender diversity in the arbitrator pool. I think maybe I'll start with those thoughts, and Niti can share her experiences.
Clearly, I can see this is being recorded, so no Chatham House rules, right? But still, that doesn't deter me. Though, of course, thank you, Nidhi, for inviting me. And I think it's always a pleasure to be in Bangalore and to speaking on this topic. I just am more excited, and I'm very happy to come back again whenever you want me to be here. So, sure, anytime. The idea is that we first thought each one of us are going to speak for about 15-20 minutes. But then we thought the idea is not for us to rant out and just to give us what our thoughts are. Idea is for you to be able to interact with us. So amongst the three of us, we've decided we'll cut down to our epilogue in that sense of being only 10 minutes. But we would really love you to have a candid discussion with us on the questions, ideas, something that we may not be able to do or could do better. So feel free to ask anything. The more controversial, the more happier I am. I always say that. So that's my underlying tone. What I intend to cover in the next 10 minutes is going to be a bunch of things. Firstly, I think I should talk about as an institution what we're doing. Why women arbitrator? Is this something of a concept called as you should look as women arbitrator? And very nicely, Nidhi and Manisha said I should also speak about what have I done in the arbitration field. So pardon me if it doesn't sound very humble and I go on all about myself talking about it. So let me begin with this, right? If I was to start with statistics, because they always resonate. I joined MCIA, which is an arbitral institution headquartered in Mumbai, from the very beginning, about 7.5 years back. And when I joined, we have a structure which is an MCIA council, and then there's an MCIA secretariat. The secretariat is responsible for your day-to-day functioning of the arbitration institution, making sure that, the arbitrators give out their awards on time, appointment of arbitrators, all of that part. What the MCI council does really is to oversee the process that everything is being applied properly. Because if you leave the power only to the secretariat or the registrar, it's just one person managing it. So we wanted to have a more democratic idea of a council who can help us to make sure that the process is followed. Why am I giving you this background? When I joined MCI, I realized that there was only one woman on the MCI council, which was Pallavi Shroff. And we had no other women on it. We had an 18-member MCI council. And I had an internal discussion with my team, and I said, with the trustees basically, because MCI is registered as a not-for-profit private trust. And they said that they didn't probably think about it, right? It is something which I am bringing to the table to say that why is it not there? Of course, they have rectified the problem a bit, not much, because our council has continued over a period of 7 years, so we could add on more women. But the point is that this is something which doesn't even strike the minds of the best legal minds as well, that they need to have some sort of a diversity. That's why discussion of this sorts of today are very important, because the more you speak about it, the more people become conscious and your subconscious mind starts working that we need to have more diversity. I will not name the institution, because if I name the institution, it's like a comparison, but there was an event which happened just last week, and whenever any conference happens, the first thing I do is that, other than what the topics are being discussed, is that how many women are speaking on that? And you cannot in today's time have a conference where a woman is not on a panel. And this needs to be pushed. Not because we don't have enough male members who can speak, but I think women have a very different perspective to get onto the table. But the problem is that why haven't been able to do it? We have a room full of women. There was a study which was done in Indian law schools which said that the ratio of women to men in a law school in India is 60 to 40. There are more women than men, but when it gets into the profession, that ratio becomes 50 and 50. When it becomes 10 years into practice, the ratio becomes 70-30, with 70% being men and 30% being women. And by the time you reach 20 years into the profession, the ratio has come down to 90-10. Which clearly shows that dispute resolution is not one of the easiest places for women to have a conducive environment to work. And I always say this, that is the reason that I think arbitration becomes even more important. Now, some of you may not like me for me to say this and may call me a pseudo-feminist, right? But I'm happy to take that. I think it is wrong on our part as women to say that we are that, with the flag bearer of how I call it a Rani ki Jhansi, that I have to go and do everything. It's not. We women have limitations. We have to understand that we have to work within the realm of what's been given to us and work best in it. Raising a family, taking care of your family needs is not something to be undermined, but it has to be done. Of course, men have become much more inclusive, but that's by far, I would say, far and less. Now, when we have a social environment to work in of that sort, how do we make sure that we still have our professional commitments met? Again, I think arbitration comes out to be much more advantageous, right? Court litigation practice, we know we don't have a control on our diaries. The list comes out today and says tomorrow you need to be in Chennai to appear. The list comes out on a Friday and says that Monday morning you need to be in Bombay or Delhi, and then the whole system goes for a toss. Whereas in arbitration, whether you are a counsel or whether you are an arbitrator, you have a much more set diary to work on. So when I sit as an arbitrator, I know that this 1 week of mine is set apart in a month where I'm sitting as an arbitrator, and I may not be in the town that I am in. I may not be in Delhi or Mumbai. I may be in some other place. So I make arrangements accordingly. Also, if any of you studied psychology, which is one of my favorite subjects, they say that women are naturally born dispute resolvers. That's how we are wired, right? You take up the example when you see kids in the family. If there are two boys fighting and they're a friend circle, it's always the women who will try and say that, why are you fighting? Let's resolve it this or this, right? It's a natural instinct. So to be a dispute resolver is a natural instinct of a woman, but what needs to be done is to make sure that that gets transported to professional life. And that's the whole purpose of having this conversation. I will only say 3 things why we are still having a discussion like this and we don't have a room full of men and 4 women talking about, oh my God, women have taken over, what do we do to get it back? That's right. And the 3 things I think is that, one is that women are also naturally very shy. We do not like to be out there upfront and say, this is what I do. We don't market ourselves. I'm sorry, there's no better word that I can use for marketing, and marketing sometimes is considered as a negative word, but not actually. Every company spends most of its funding or most of its finances on marketing. So definitely marketing is a good thing to be doing, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. And third, I think, is that we are very afraid to be stereotyped, right? If we are too bold out there and say, then we are stereotyped as aggressive, not feminine. if we are too dull and shy and very, I would say, slow voice to say, oh, she's just too homely, she doesn't have an aggression, I'm not too sure you can do it or not. And I think those are the 3 barriers which as a women we need to break out somewhere. There is no harm in going and telling people, I want to sit as an arbitrator and kindly consider me. What's going to happen? You tell 100 people, 90 people are going to say, oh no, not interested, or may come and gossip and say that, she was actively asking for work. But what's so wrong? I'm only actively asking for work, which I think I'm capable of doing it. So I think you need to have that self-confidence to be able to say that, no, I want to do this. So I've not only worked in an institution before, I have worked in 2 law firms. And this I'm talking about a period from 2008 to 2017, where I then joined MCIA. When I joined a law firm, I told the law firm, all I'm going to do is arbitration. They said, but that's not the practice works. We have dispute lawyers and you will have to need to go to court. And I put my foot down even before I took a job. I said, no, I only want to do arbitration. There has to be enough work in the firm to support me for that. Now, many of you may think of it, or Neeti could do it because she may have had a backing, she did not need the job, she would have found something else. No, I sat at home for 3 months without a job. I don't come from a legal family. Far and beyond, there is not even anybody in my family who's done law. But I was like, I'm not going to compromise on something which I don't want to do, right? And keep talking about it to say, this is my forte, this is what I want to do, and I will do it well. And thankfully, I would say, luckily, as I say, manifestation of what we want to believe also, God's been kind enough that I have been associated with arbitration in one way or the other. Both the firms that I worked in, whether it was ELP, which was economic laws practice, or then I worked with Trilegal, they didn't have a specialized arbitration department, but all I did was arbitration. And it just worked out very brilliantly for the firm as well to say that they have a resource who's working on arbitration as a counsel at that time. When I joined MCIA, which is almost now 7.5 years back when we were established, I had started to get appointment as arbitrator. It was a very interesting job profile to take because you're creating something grounds up. But then I had to compromise and think of it that I cannot be a counsel, of course, but then do I stop being an arbitrator because I started to get appointment as arbitrator? I didn't shy away from my company to say that I'm very happy to take on the role with MCIA, but I will accept arbitration as an arbitrator. So the idea really for me to say and to mix it up with what I have done in my profession is that sometimes you need to push those boundaries. And when you push those boundaries, people become more acceptable. There was a Harvard study which said that women use the word sorry 60% more than men do because we're always apologetic. Apologetic of what, right? It's just a human nature. Next time when you're talking and you are in any social environment, now be conscious of it and think of it, how much sorry do you use in comparison to your male counterparts. We are a little late to the meeting, we are all sorry. You should be apologetic. I'm not saying if you're late for a meeting, one should be. But there's also a way to put it, right? You say, I'm sorry, I should not have been that late, but this and this happened or something happened. We would just make it to make point through the meeting that we will apologize at least 10 times. And it's not you, I still do it. I'm still becoming conscious that it's fine, things do happen. My male counterparts are not that apologetic, right? So that is on I wouldn't call it aggression, but I would call it this as being assertive, standing your ground without stepping onto anyone's shoes. Second, market. How do you market? I spoke to Nidhi and I said, Nidhi, what's the audience is going to be? She's like, it's going to be all women. If you ask me, my first reaction was, why? Don't men need to understand for us to be inclusive? And then Nidhi and I spoke about it a little more and she said, Neeti, the idea is that if you're all women, it may be just easier to have a conversation with what women are thinking about. Though with due respect, I still didn't agree to her, but I quite understand where she was coming from, right? It's easy to come and say that, you don't want to have a discussion where you have half of the men and half of women and getting into a debate. No, it's not like that. And this is how we work. But what I want to say is that you need to have this discussion with men around. So we did a session around it, and why do I suggest have men? I was in a law firm. And we had this discussion on diversity. And there was this boy, I still very vividly remember, 3 years into profession, and he said, "You've been going on for an hour about it. Tell me, what can we do?" I mean, if my partner who wants to give a work to a male associate and not to a female associate, because she has to probably reach home early, there are, other issues of privacy, security, and all of it, and not everybody's family is happy for women to be working till 2 in the morning. He said, "What can I do as a boy? It's not my mistake." I said, "Point well taken if the partner is not giving the work. But tell me what happens where I, and let's say Purnima was a male counterpart for me, I have some work, some emergency, or my parents want me to be back at home at 8 o'clock. I go to Purnima and say, 'Listen, you're my colleague. Can you please cover it up for me? I will send you work by an email and all of it. Be in touch with me on that, but I can't be physically seen here. Just cover for me.'" I said, "What are you going to do is that," not Purnima will do it, as an example, "you're going to try and shine yourself in front of the partner that she has let, but see, I am here to do it." That's what you can do, right? You can be inclusive. So it's again about, I said, pushing your boundaries and telling your partners, "I'm happy to do the work. I will do the work. But if I need to be back home by 8, I need to be back home by 8. I'll give you another example from my life, and then I will stop probably on this, and then we'll take questions. When I joined MCIA, which my role now is marketing. So I market the institution, right? I tell you, why should you come to an MCIA? And as you can well understand, that half or maybe about 70% of the people that I end up meeting are senior practitioners in law firms, in-house counsel, who are 90% males. Whenever I would reach out to them and say that, "Let's have a meeting," almost more than 50% would say, "Let's meet for dinner and a drink." Or if they were not polite to say a drink, they'll say, "Let's meet for dinner." I said, "No, sorry. No work happens over dinner." Or what work can happen over a breakfast or a lunch? Why does it have to happen over dinner? I said, "No, I'll do a breakfast meeting with you at 8. I'll do a lunch meeting with you. I don't do meetings after 7. And this is something I told my organization as well, and said that I am not going to go on an official meeting after 7 p.m. Not that I don't go. I go and party with my friends till 2 a.m. in the morning as well. But that's my safe space of working. That's my party time, right? I do not want to be doing my professional work beyond 7, because if I'm working from 8 to 7, I think that's good enough a time to spend. People understood over a period of time. Some maybe said, "Sorry, we'll not meet." Fine by it. They came back maybe 2 years later and said that if they really want to have a meeting, then they will give me time in the morning or the afternoon. So some things may work, some things may not work. But what I'm trying to convey the message here is that rather than trying to fit into what the environment has been created for us, let's try and work together to create an environment that we feel safe in. An environment where we feel that we can do much more, contribute particularly maybe much more than what our male counterparts do. And that doesn't mean that tomorrow when you start your firms and practice that you say, "I'm sorry, I'm only going to hire a female." That's not the point. We have to be inclusive. And one book I always recommend for you to read on this is actually Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And I think she very well put it is there, and I've seen a change. So when I speak to my mother, 40 years back, 50 years back, I think the women were supposed to be the biggest enemy of women, right? Take it the household, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law issues. You never hear of a daughter-in-law, father-in-law issues. Why is that women cannot support women? And when you read this Lean In book, and she comes up with real instances where she say that how, though she's such a higher position of a CEO, that if she had to get into a presentation, right? Just like there's a presentation I have to do, and I'm nervous, all nervous. I'll go out, I'll talk to my female counterparts. They will not do anything to elevate my fear. They'll only make me more nervous. But she said, you take an example of two men. A man wants to go for a presentation, is all nervous. He'll take his colleague on the side and go and say, like, discuss, I want to do this and that. He will just support and tell him, don't put it this way, put it that way. So if we start changing our attitude, I'm sure others start changing attitude towards as well. So with that, I will stop it of what my experience has been, what we can do. But there's a lot more, of course, that we can speak on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I'll just pick up a few points because I think that was also some of the things that are normally discussed also in this context. One is visibility, as Niti spoke about. And the very fact that in arbitration and the way how do you get appointed, even litigation, right? And arbitrators, how do you get appointed? By word of mouth. Oh, he's good, oh, she's good. That's how we all get work. That's how we all get work, even as arbitrators. Is he good? Is he good with engineering contracts? That, I think, is where we can work as a community as well, right? Word of mouth. If you work with a female litigator and a female arbitrator, if you're going to issue a notice to your counterparty, please suggest, right? I'm not saying, and again, this is another point that Neeti covered so well, which is that we're not doing this as only a women empowerment thing. I think the justice system needs a woman's perspective. It helps, right? There is a perspective that women are bringing to the table. There is a perspective that a female judge will give to decision making. So I don't think it should be seen as an empowerment mission, right? One is, of course, empower ourselves because it's a field that we'd like to be in more. But secondly, I think give the judicial process itself a different outlook, right? Which is very important. So maybe what we'll do is, Neeti, if you can give us a little more on what is a path, like let's say I want to be an arbitrator today and you have to start early, right? Of course, there is a path that you have taken. But today there are certain skills, there are certain visibility issues like you mentioned, right? How do we tackle these, and what would you suggest are very concrete steps that today we can take to become an arbitrator? It need not be women specific.
Yes. So I think there are again two things that I can think of and talk about. One is, I think a training is required. To sit as an arbitrator, though you may understand the law very well, you can assimilate the facts, you've done it on all of it, we all are legally trained, right? But writing an award is a very different skill set. And it's a skill set which you definitely must acquire if you want to be an arbitrator. The reason I say is that because ultimately, whatever has transpired in an arbitration over 18 months, your award is a reflection of it. And if you're not able to draft an award which is cogent enough to stand the scrutiny of the court, there is just no point sitting as an arbitrator. So though of course there are many courses which happen around, I personally feel, and again I'm not biased because I'm a part of it, but I think Chartered Institute of Arbitrators does a very good job. Again, people have come back and said, oh, they're expensive. Yes, of course they're expensive. You're looking at about spending 2 lakh of rupees in doing their 3-level courses. You start from an associate, you become a member, and then you become a fellow. Becoming a fellow of a Chartered Institute of Arbitrators is no easy job, I can tell you that. Retired judges, not only of India, but even your QCs, your KCs, now the KCs, and the retired judges of UK have also failed to pass through that award because the training is very stringent. But if you're able to get through that training and get that accreditation, I can assure you, it is not that it's not an assurance to get an arbitrator appointment, but it is definitely helpful to get an arbitrator appointment. So if you're on LinkedIn and you see a lot of people use this postscripts of their name, right? So-and-so FCIR. Because it's a designation, if I may call it, or a title which is recognized across the globe. So that's one training I have found it to be very useful, something that you can put your money in. Second, I think for the younger members, I would say, see, if you're 2 years, 3 years, up to 5 years into profession or 7 years into profession as well, I think it's rather immature to say that I want to sit as an arbitrator. It's a decision making which is not only on law, it comes through experience of dealing with the counsel and the antics of the counsels as well, right? And we all know the theatrics of each of us in the courts, in the arbitration. So that only comes with maturity. So for younger arbitrator aspirants, I always say you have these trainings called as tribunal secretary programs. They are held across India, across globe as well. I wouldn't say that one is better over the other. Just check what works for you. What happens with that is that when you have a tribunal secretary training, you are appointed as a tribunal secretary with an arbitrator and you get your training of how do you maneuver through an arbitration. So training is one part of it. Second, visibility, how I do is that, and I will give you an example of today as well, where I would like to believe I'm still visible. There is an event happening in London and I get to know that a particular firm is doing it. I didn't shy away from writing to them to say, this is what I am, this is what my profile is, I am in London at that time. Please do consider if you would like me to be on your panel. And I've got a reply today, just 5 minutes back, to say that thank you for your email. We are doing our call. We'll let you know if there's a speaker profile available. That's good enough for them to know of my availability. So when you know of any events happening, you have these young events, right? Young ICA happen, young YAF happen, young MCI happen. Be there, out there, say that we are interested to participate, we're interested to speak, this is what our profile is. Write. There's nothing better than writing and getting your message across. Why I say that, I'll give you with an example. There is this guy called Ashutosh Ray. I remember his name. He's now in a law firm. When he was in his 5th year law college, in a conference of this sorts, he had written an article on White Industries, which was the first investment arbitration case that India faced. Fali Nariman, who was sitting in the speakers, he actually pointed out that guy and said that if any one of you wants to read about White Industries, read the article by Ashutosh Ray, right? So he had chanced upon that through somewhere that he'd written and got it there. Nothing like writing. Please don't do a case analysis at the court. These were the facts, this was what the claimant said, respondent said, analysis. There's dime and dozen. Put in some work to write. Writing is a very strong way to get your views across. I don't think any one of you is in the law college anymore, so maybe for your colleagues, friends, or some are. Moot courts are a very good way to be out there, to learn the skill, whatever moot court is happening, right? You learn the skills of there, and I can tell you that in the field of arbitration, there's nothing like Wismoot, which happens in Vienna. You get picked up. I've seen associates getting picked up directly by law firms from the Wismoot itself. LinkedIn is a very powerful source. So when you write, where do you publish? LinkedIn is a very good source for you to publish smaller articles. Send it across. Now you know a group of these people. You've written something, write to Purnima, write to Manisha, write to me, say that, okay, this is what I've written. Do you think I could just get it published? I get these requests. Sometimes people like us have no time to write, but we get approached to say that, can you please author a chapter in a book? So when you've written things like that, it's very easy for me to reach out and say that, okay, listen, I've seen your piece, you write very well. I have been asked to author, would you co-author with me? Because I have no time to write it, honestly. But you may have more time on hand, right? So find those, avenues to reach out. One thing I want to tell you, which again, I'll pick it up from Lean In, it's not my own version of it. I definitely am inspired from that. How, when we grew up, we were told the Cinderella stories and all those stories to say that there'll be a Prince Charming coming your way and to take you off your feet and you'll find your life partner sorts, which we've realized doesn't happen really. The new theory is that you will have a mentor who's going to help you. So there'll be some mentor who's going to be there who will help you to chart out the plane. Don't wait for that mentor. Be your own mentor. I always say that. It's very lucky if you get a good mentor, but not all of us are going to get that. So try and find yourself, reach out to people, write things yourself, read, write, and try and speak at different events is what my tips are going to be, Manisha.
Just to add to what Nidhi has kind of broadlined as to what one can do to reach there, to be an arbitrator, to arbitrate. She also talked about a course which comes with a prize. There could be some of us who could splurge that amount to take up such a kind of a beautiful course that would eventually help us to be an arbitrator. There could also be people who may not be able to afford it. So how do you chart your journey to be an arbitrator, and what little baby steps you can take to eventually reach there? It need not all have to come at an expense, but it is a journey that's going to take quite a few years, your patience, your consistent efforts, and your dedication. So for those of you who are still in college, maybe an internship idea is a wonderful thing that you can take up, and you have a focused journey all through, and you're clear that you want to do it, and you will try and gain experiences in different sectors, as like it probably in a law firm, probably in an arbitration institution, probably with a practitioner who is specialized in arbitration area and things like that. Also journaling, also writing articles or writing books or contributing some way through writing. It could be a case law analysis as well to begin with. There's nothing wrong with that. Suddenly you cannot be so creative that you're creating a masterpiece. It's not possible with all of us, right? You'll have to make a beginning. It could be a humble beginning. It could be a case law analysis. But you do it in a small way and take it forward over a period of time.
You could also consider associating yourself with somebody who's already an established name in the industry, in that particular sphere, in that area of arbitration. You could also write to institutions. There are lots of internship options even in arbitral institutions where you could have a stint of a month or 2 months where you get to know how things work and what the system is all about and things like that. So there could be many.
Mira, can you, sorry, interject, but if both of you can elaborate a little more on that, are they actually internship opportunities? Like how we have judicial clerkships?
Yes.
Do these organizations, how do you apply for those? And what is that? As in, are
Supposing
you a
if you-
judicial intern to the arbitrator or is it with the arbitration center?
No,
how
I'll
does it
tell you
work?
because I'm more aware of the Arbitration and Conciliation Center in
Center,
Bangalore, which is an initiative of the Honorable High Court of Karnataka. So there you have opportunities for internship where you just have to write to the director, who is the head of that directorate, and then you write about your interest, and there is a streamlined process and how you generally apply for any internship to any law firm for that matter, to any individual practitioner for that matter. So it's going to be scanned, and depending upon the vacancies that are available there, depending upon for how long they could accommodate you, you will get an opportunity. If you're perseverant, then probably not immediately as when you apply, but then over a period of time, if you're consistent in pursuing that, then I'm sure eventually you will get an opportunity to see how things work there. So basically, what you do there is, this is how I understand it, that you would not be attached to any arbitrator, but you would generally be there for doing research part of the work. Okay, you could be assigned some work by the director, and there are 2 deputy directors who in turn help out the director in administering the entire system, the directorate. So you would get involved in lot many areas.
So may not be with one arbitrator, but multiple arbitrations you may
Yes.
get research.
Yes,
for.
I'm
We've actually had some interns sit in on our arbitrations
Yes.
at the center.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're not associated with a arbitrator, but they're assigned to
Yes.
that case, and then I think they move on.
Yes.
They can at least see the case processes.
Yeah.
And I think all international institutions have it as well. So we do one internship, which is every 2 years we take an intern for 6 months. So in their final year, because you need to have at least a sense of some continuity. So the current case manager that I have working with me, she was working with us for 6 months, and then eventually we hired her as well because she was interested. She was very good.
That 6 months is post school or college hours.
Yes, I mean, because most of the, at least a 5-year law college I understand now has that your final year, final semester is actually for the internships itself. So they're able to do it. But we take regular interns for a month, 2 months as well, who then whatever arbitrations are happening, they just work with the case manager to see how the documentation happens, how the process runs and on it as well. And I know that every international arbitral institution does it. I have interned with ICC for 6 months in Paris. I did that. LCI does it internship. SIAC has it as well. So it's a good way of knowing how an institution works. I agree with Raj on that, yes.
And then it could also be as simple as sitting in a court room and observing how the arbitration matter is being argued. It could be as simple as that step, but then it will give you an idea as to how things are put into working, right? So for somebody who has no idea as to now today I'm here, then how do I chart my journey? I have no clue as to how to. I'm a first generation lawyer, first generation judge, and now an arbitrator. So I've just gone with what I have felt confident about, and when I took voluntary retirement, probably some people wrote me off. That's the end of a career. Probably that's how they looked at it. But you knew it inside that you're not going to be sitting quiet by doing something different that would satisfy you, not to convince others as to what you are doing, but to kind of fulfill your own individual ambitions. So you need not, what I'm trying to kind of drive home the point is, you need not have to do something that's very big, that's very fanciful. It could be very little small things that would eventually take you there. And instead of probably, I'm not probably in alignment with the entire thought process with regard to why there are no more women arbitrators, I know what is it that's going wrong and all that. But instead of looking externally, I think it's time for us to look internally. Let's question ourselves as to in what kind of places have I applied so far for me to take that journey up. Instead of blaming some external factors, they could have done something, I think that would be more, that will take us probably closer to the destination than like just sitting quiet and then doing nothing and then playing with external factors. अगर ये होता तो शायद हम लोग we could have seen more number of arbitrators in this arena and all that. So I think it's time for us to kind of look internally and take those steps which would kind of make us reach closer to our destination. And Manisha talked about in the beginning when she introduced that this is not going to be about arbitration practice as a lawyer, but this is just focused on an arbitrator, how to be an arbitrator. But you cannot suddenly become an arbitrator without any experience behind you. So in that sense, it is very crucial and important that you have some, even that practice as a lawyer in arbitration matters is going to keep you in very good stead in the future when you would eventually be an arbitrator, when your visibility is like more evident and all that. So I do not see anything that is like as to why you should cut down on the practice as a lawyer on arbitration area and then just be focused like no, I have to be now an arbitrator. There's nothing wrong in thinking like that, but there's definitely more good in having that experience behind you. Variety.
No, I think the intention was to sort of narrow the scope of the talk.
Yes,
yes. So that we don't go into arbitration practice and rather focus
on
what skills we can develop to be as an arbitrator.
And that's a very important skill. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Of course, practice of arbitration.
Practice, yes.
So just to take away from that, sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't really know, I'm not going to take time away from
No, don't
you.
worry.
But they're all lawyers here, right? I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so it doesn't impact me, and I have no desire of becoming an arbitrator. So I'm not competing at all. So the floor is all yours. But I think someone should address the fundamental issue in India that arbitrators have always been retired justices of Supreme Court, High Court, whatever judges they are. And they're all 80 plus. Right? I've yet to see an arbitrator. It's not gender. It's got nothing to do with gender. It has everything to do with why arbitrators in India. I mean, I don't know institutional. Maybe you can give the statistics on institutional. But at least all ad hoc arbitration where I've testified have all been ex-judges of High Court, ex-judges of Supreme Court. How are we going to change that dynamic first? So is the room here, do they all have to become Supreme Court judges or High Court judges? I mean, you're also a judge. So I think I'm only asking the panel that please give them the right perspective so that, they start on arbitration and then they figure out that, oh, you're not a judge. You're not a retired Supreme Court judge. Well, they've all started on a journey and I don't want them to blame us 10 years from now because they're very young minds. How are we going to address that problem first?
If I may take that, you want to add? Yeah.
As a practitioner at the High Court and as a panel advocate for the railways, I have seen that the judges are in favor of appointing their own friends. Because even if the arbitration calls for an expert arbitrator, they say, Ila namjanane idare. They'll do
Right, they'll give you the
it.
list.
So that is what is happening and we see it and it's not working very well. And all these youngsters who are just coming out of law schools, they all have these grand visions of, there being alternative dispute resolution and, the courts being overburdened. There will be huge scope for, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms and they can become arbitrators. But I'm not seeing it happening in the near future. They're not going to give it up. That I can have seen it in the courts. So that needs to be addressed.
I add a question to that because I think it's related and maybe, I think we spoke about what the young people can do. I think I also want to know as an already practicing advocate. We can see more women in mediation as mediators, etc. Right? What can we also do, right? Apart from just visibility, what is it that we can do when we're not retired judges, right? To get empaneled with, because after a point if I'm empaneled with certain organizations that act as arbitrators, now I think we see an increasing trend of advocates being appointed as arbitrators, right? We do see a lot of so-called smaller matters where we see advocates being appointed. So what can we do as existing practicing advocate with maybe 10 years, 20 years experience to, break that barrier and enter the field of being arbitrators? being nominated?
Sorry, so I'm going to take Vidya's question first. I think it is true that most ad hoc appointments of arbitrators continue to be retired judges, and therein is a problem. So when we address the question of who's going to become an arbitrator, we also have to address the larger question of who's becoming our judges, who's becoming senior counsel. And there is definitely, the Karnataka High Court, the last time around, we had a handful of women who became senior counsel. But also if you looked at who applied, a handful of women applied. Why were there no more applicants for becoming senior counsel? So that's a question we have to ask ourselves. So they're very... and the debate on who are our judges, I think at the subordinate judiciary, that's an incorrect use of the term, but whatever, the lower judiciaries, we have more women across, and there are enough studies to show this across because of various reasons, affirmative action, younger judges. But at the High Court and the Supreme Court, we don't have enough women being appointed as judges. Now, that's the reason why we don't have enough arbitrators who are women coming from there. But of course, do we all want to become judges? And then from therein, do we want to become arbitrators? Or is there a career path just to be arbitrators without having to go through the judiciary? As we stand now, the ad hoc appointment continue to be connected to the judiciary. So I know Rahat is here. For example, our High Court, the Karnataka High Court, when they appoint even an ad hoc, so let's suppose you file a Section 11, you go there, the appointment automatically is to the Karnataka Arbitration Center, right? That's sort of the default route. And who are the arbitrators at the Karnataka Arbitration Center? They're all retired judges. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't encountered...
No, there are advocates who are also empaneled.
But the majority are judges.
But majority are judges.
Yeah, so that has to change. So that means either the High Court has to be convinced that look, while the Karnataka Arbitration Center is one avenue, but there could be other avenues. There have been cases where people have insisted that, look, either parties agree that I want Manisha as the arbitrator, you appoint Manisha, then the court cannot really say anything. But the practice is what happens, Nidhi will propose Niti as an arbitrator, I also know I want Manisha as an arbitrator, then some third party will get appointed as arbitrator, usually at the Karnataka Arbitration Center. So one way is, for example, you should talk to the Karnataka Arbitration Center and say, hey, you are getting the maximum number of appointments. Here are a list of 10 women in Karnataka, or 20 women, or 30 women, and here are our credentials. Please at least appoint each of them once this year. I don't know how they will react, but it's worth writing a letter. We haven't done that, right? When we appoint, and we have allies, and this is something that's probably connected to Lenin despite all its criticism and Sheryl Sandberg's otherwise, how her career has moved on. But the fact is that you need allies, right? We need to appoint each other as arbitrators. We need to believe. I increasingly, wherever I'm conflicted in not arbitration, but litigation, anything else, I try and refer to women outside my firm, so that it goes to women, because we're not great at networking and we're shy and we do apologize much more. So it should go to other women. So if you do that, I think the wheels will certainly change. Where I do see an actual improvement is the institutions. The institutions are much more conscious of who they appoint. So the MCIA, the ICC, the SIAC, the LCIA, these are the institutions that I regularly work with, but the AAA, the others, all of them are very, very conscious of diversity as an idea. They have enough women. They're increasingly looking for women. But these are all international arbitrations. So there are all kinds of arbitrations, from the Railway Board arbitrations to your, investment treaty arbitrations. So while at the top end, we have, I was just going to narrate on my own personal experience. We had one situation where we were counsel. We were acting for a government entity, not the government. The Solicitor General was engaged by us because we were required to engage him. And there was a very young New Zealand arbitrator who must be 35 years old. So it was very interesting to see the dynamic, and she was a woman. And the dynamics were very different. He didn't expect such a young person, but he's senior counsel, Solicitor General. He argued, and it was fine. And there's nothing wrong. So the wheels turn, and that was an ICC arbitration, and it happened. I remember the first time I was appointed as an emergency arbitrator by the MCIA. I had a senior counsel before me, and it took him 2 hearings to say, to get over the fact that he was he was talking to me and I was going to decide his case. And I said, you don't have to call me madam, you just have to call me Miss Hatti, and, that's fine, So there's no, I'm not superior, nor are you inferior, this will make you no lesser. But you have to say that in a way without hurting his ego and getting on with it. And then after that, he was fine, it got on. In fact, he messaged some other friend of mine saying, she did a good job. And it was all online and it worked well. But, but the fact that it takes that sort of movement to say this is where it is, you have to get. So the institution, I think we're there. But the institutional numbers are insignificant compared to what goes to our courts. The Bombay High Court regularly appoints advocates. I don't think our High Court is doing so. I know that there are conversations on, and all of you should, and maybe this is food for thought, is do we then write as when we've written many letters on various issues, including lists coming, on time with nothing moving. But I think it's worth writing a letter to saying, hey, we want more women arbitrators, or how many women arbitrators, or we want more lawyers as arbitrators, but please keep in mind diversity as well. And, whatever qualification, if you don't find, well and good, but that's one way of going forward.
Can I just
Absolutely.
step
Just
in?
to
Yes.
add, if you can cover this also amongst all three of you, because like ma'am said, she's already empaneled on the railway, with the railways. What?
She's
as a
not
counsel-
empaneled.
No, but there is definitely a process of empaneling advocates with the Bangalore Arbitration Centre, and we have multiple, women mediators who I think are excellent, and really, especially in Bangalore, right? If you see the women mediators, I have the statistics where like over 60% when it comes to mediation, but arbitration, we're at less than 20, right? What is the empanelment process apart from requesting High Court, of course? How can women advocate today get empaneled with any organizations that you have experience, including the Karnataka Arbitration?
So, just to quickly say what Poonam said, and then on the question of Poonima said on this, is that I'll give you the statistics on MCIA. Do I know that institutional arbitration is still very less in India? And with that, I'll try and cover your question as well there. Previous year, 2022, we had done appointment of about 33% of arbitrator appointments were women. Last year, we made the number increase to 45%, right? And out of this was almost about 80% of them were first-time arbitrator appointed. They've never sat as an arbitrator, but were arbitrator counsel. We have a retired judge appointed in only one arbitration of MCI out of 84 arbitrations that we're doing right now. Now, yes, I may very clearly say that I make it a point that when the council is appointing an arbitrator, in the list, there has to be at least 50% of women named to be there. But I am telling you today, it is so difficult to find names of women arbitrator. It's not easy. Firstly, it's difficult to appoint women from law firm because there's a lot of conflict issues which arise in. Out of the law firm scenario, if you look at it, because like what Purnima said, the senior advocates, there are less number of them, even lesser who are doing commercial work, even lesser who are doing arbitration work, right? Now, as an institution or even in an ad hoc, you don't want to have an arbitrator who doesn't understand how an arbitration process runs. You don't want another court litigation to be, again, replicated in an arbitration. So the problem is not only that we're not able to appoint, I can tell you, Manisha, it is also very difficult to identify them. I have written to Purnima a couple of times and said, can you please suggest me some more women arbitrator and whom we can appoint? That's why I said training and having that visibility. In terms of empanelment, at least with MCI, we don't have a published panel, but we always welcome for all of you to please write to the institution and say, this is my CV, and please don't say that you can sit as an arbitrator in any kind of a case. I am not somebody who believes that one could be an arbitrator in an infrastructure case as well and could be doing a shareholders dispute and tomorrow a financial dispute. No, you have your own forte, and that's what the parties want, right? One thing we say differentiates between an arbitration litigation is that you want an arbitrator who's a subject matter specialist. Not like in a court where the judge may have never done a sort of a IT dispute but is listening to an IT dispute. So be very specific that these are the areas of law where I want to sit as an arbitrator. This is what my credentials are, and please consider me for an appointment.
Is there a rough age or experience that you're looking at? I don't know age, but experience, number of years, because obviously there's some credibility to an arbitrator, right?
I would say not less than 10 years. Not less than 10 years, for sure, right? I mean, one could be like a 9 or 11 years, a different thing, but on an average, I don't think that my counsel would be very comfortable, or parties would be very comfortable as well, to have an arbitrator who's less than 10 years of experience. Ultimately, like Purnima also said, that counsel who's appearing would be senior advocates and all. I just want to give you one more example of how at least institutions and MCI does difference. In our rules, we are very distinct from most of the rules, where in an appointment we have said that each party can nominate an arbitrator, but the presiding arbitrator is always by MCIA. I'm dealing with an issue right now where each party nominated a retired judge. And I was very clear, retired Bombay High Court judges, 2 of them, because the arbitration is Bombay seated. And I was very clear with my counsel that we're not going to have a third arbitrator who's a retired judge, because then what is the difference between ad hoc and an institutional arbitration? But again, the problem was this: I cannot appoint somebody who's a senior counsel as well, because they're just so subservient to the retired judges that it just doesn't serve the purpose of having a presiding arbitrator. So I wrote to my counsel and said, we need to appoint firstly a women arbitrator. Secondly, has to be somebody who understands Indian law but is not from India. I sent them the recommendation of 3 women arbitrators. Each one of them great in what they're doing. Also, we take an undertaking from the arbitrators that if they have to travel from outside of India to an arbitration in India, because the seat is Mumbai, it is going to be at their cost and stay. And they're very happy to do it, because we do not want to pass on the cost to the parties. You know, one of my council members actually called me and said that, Nidhi, we are going ahead and appointing this arbitrator, but you may want to call up the 2 retired judges and tell them that you're appointing somebody of her stature to be there. And I had thought as like, these are the people who go to conferences and talk about it. And today they're having a cold feet to do it. But you have to put your foot down as an institution. I said, fine, I'll do it. This was one of the most difficult conversations. What do? I picked up a call, spoke to a retired judge and tell him, what, sorry, but I'm not appointing another retired judge. I'm appointing a woman. No, I'm not apologetic about it, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that institutions can play a role. What can you do? So when I speak to counterparts, law firm practitioners outside of India, as a matter of policy now, and it's for each one of you probably to do it, when you have a Section 11 petition, you go to the court of Section 11, make it a point to give 3 nominations, out of which try to put 2 as women. See, when you again and again hear a name as well, right? If I make a Section 11, I put Nidhi's name, Manisha's name, and one more guy's name. The court may still appoint the male, or may just appoint somebody they want to. Next time I make an application, I put again Purnima's name, Rahat's name. It's a constant reminder as well.
The tricky part that Purnima just mentioned, what's happening here is that the High Court is going to the Karnataka Arbitration Center and appointing.
They don't look at the list at all?
They don't look at an ad hoc list. So which is why I'm speaking on empanelment, because there are women with years of experience here. There's a way to get empaneled without becoming a retired High Court or district judge. What is the process for empanelment?
See, I just want to reconnect with what Neeti just mentioned. With regards to training, this is nothing in defense, but it is a fact that when you have already served as a judicial officer, as a judge, you would have already had the training that is required to arbitrate over a matter. Okay, it could be very general skills. Okay, and it is also true that arbitration is party-centric, party autonomy is at play, and then it could be the parties, it is the parties in fact, who would choose as to who their arbitrators should be. Let's not lose our focus on this, because we cannot be talking in general terms. Somebody XYZ wants to be an arbitrator, ABC and wants to be an arbitrator, but we should also understand that it is very subject specific. It could be an arbitration which is driven by IPR, whatever business contract. It could be an arbitration where predominantly there is something related to IT. It could be something else. There varies, varied subject matters. So when you are, asking yourself as to how do I, take this forward. So you need to identify yourself as to where is your specialized area of practice, right? So tomorrow, if somebody is it could be very new. Supposing AI, tomorrow you could be having, many arbitrations. Which will necessarily want you to deal with something with AI. So if you are developing your practice from today itself with a focus on AI, tomorrow if there is a requirement, and then your name is automatically suggested, because there's nobody else who can do that, right? So this is how I look at it. With regards to empanelment, it is it is as simple as any other requisition of yours, wherein you put in, your previous experience, your qualifications, and your interest that you would want to be an arbitrator. There is nothing extra to that. There's nothing that's secretive about it. There's nothing that is not understandable. It is just like, क्या बोलते हैं, as to what drives you to be an arbitrator. That needs an answer from each one of at an individual level. Why is it that I want to be an arbitrator, right? So I think yes. So
maybe have some training
and
sessions for
also-
your judges also, right?
Absolutely.
Have some training for
Absolutely.
sitting
And
judges.
exactly. And that's why when you are a judge, you're not only undergoing that 1 year of mandatory training at the beginning of your joining the service, but you're also taking up a lot of workshops, trainings all through your service. So that is very handy, and it could not just be judicial skills. It could be on subject matters as well, where you are hearing a lot many experts, and so you have that much of exposure already behind you. Probably we should also think of developing training centers as one of the. Also, I have heard of another arbitration center which is kind of controlled by, I think, advocates in Bangalore. They run that arbitration center, Bangalore Arbitration Center. So where there are only there are only advocates for that matter, right?
I'm not aware.
Okay. So you could parallelly also build an institution where
Yeah. Sorry, I.
See, Arbitration Act doesn't differentiate between an award that is done. Yes, please go ahead.
There is an institution,
Yes.
MCI,
Okay.
has certain accreditations, or rather it's built its reputation over a certain number of years. So while I understand that, as advocates, maybe, we want to say, or we have to first decide what kind of arbitration we want to do and things like that. All that is well and fine, but
Yes.
wondering for commercial clients or corporate clients or any clients who are looking at arbitrating, getting into an arbitration, when they want to appoint an arbitrator, they are looking at the arbitrator and the arbitrator's domain expertise. Right? So that would also probably, it's not that today I can suddenly set up shop and say, okay, Nidhi is open for arbitration, right? For people to take me seriously, they need to know that I have XYZ qualifications, and so, hence I will be appointed as an arbitrator. So is there something with the Karnataka Arbitration Center, Conciliation Center, where now you said we can apply and there's nothing secret about it. But there's a difference if you apply, there's a difference if I apply, there's a difference if somebody else applies, because you have judicial service. So maybe there is something which says that as soon as you are a retired judge or a judge or something, you automatically, you will be considered, as opposed to an advocate who's practicing. I don't know of any advocates who are impaneled as arbitrators. If there are, I mean, that's excellent.
I think it's just lack of knowledge. Now that we're speaking about it, I think there's certainly a way that we can try and apply, and shouldn't be complicated, so long as there's no conflict. You actually have a chance of being appointed as an arbitrator through the arbitration center.
Can I recommend, why don't, just as a suggestion, is that why don't you get the Karnataka Arbitration Center itself to give you a statistics as to how many women arbitrators they have, how many they have appointed in the last 2 years, and then just write a letter to your chief to say that this is what is internationally happening, because LCIA, CIAC, ICC, they all publish their statistics. MCI has published its statistics, and just as an FYI sort of a thing, put it up there. I mean, you never know what gets picked up from
That's
where,
what I was
right?
saying. Writing the letter always helps.
I also think, like Radha was saying, I don't think enough effort has been made to make those applications, right? Which is what we commonly see as what they call as a pipeline leak. There is no pipeline of women for you to appoint as arbitrators. If you had the pipeline, then you automatically would get more, right? And of course, there are other things at play which Ma'am spoke about, which is, you'll appoint your friends, etc. But I think that's what we're trying to develop here. Even we have friends, right? So we also try and appoint each other and nominate each other. Of course, the capable ones. We're not trying to say we'll appoint a female lawyer at any cost.
No, I just want to say that, to your point, Nidhi, about you have the expertise and you're here. There is definitely an unconscious bias against women. Let's not run away from that, right? You would rather have a man arbitrating your case than a woman. All things similar. Run a poll. put 3 people similar to your senior, to your colleague, see who they'll pick and ask why not. There is never a clear answer why they don't want the woman. It's just that we'll go with this guy. It'll be more palatable. People will find it comfortable. As if these things matter. I'd like to make people uncomfortable every once in a while. So, there is never a clear answer as to why they want the man. And that's the reason why it is. Unfortunately, in a time and age where, I sometimes tell my juniors that I feel I'm moving between generations. You say, let's go, if your client is a Google type company, you go do something, then you come back to office, that is 100 years ahead, your office is current, 2024, you go to a court which is 100 years behind, and in a day you've moved like 200 years back and forth. So that's the reason why I think you really have to figure out that there is clearly an unconscious bias, right? So nominate. The other thing that I have recommended is talk to your people in-house. They are the people who are at the core of this party autonomy business. Let the clients say, we want a woman, right? So, and there is something called the ERA, which is called the Equal Representation Pledge Association. Look it up. It basically says we're all going to make sure that we will do whatever we can. So even law firms sign it, we've signed it, which basically says we will try and tell our clients that whenever you want an arbitral appointment, put down women as well as a part of it. Often my clients say, okay, we will represent, say, we will ask for Manisha. She looks fine on paper. If necessary, she's conflict cleared, all of that. But what if we have the other side appoints a High Court judge? Will Manisha be able to sit on that panel and hold herself and disagree with that? Or will she get run over by it? That's when we have to say, no, Manisha's already sat on 5 panels with a retired High Court judge. Or Manisha's better than a High Court judge. And she will not get influenced, and she'll stand and not be in any way lesser than a High Court judge or a Supreme Court judge. When you say appoint a High Court judge, they all say, no, I appoint a Supreme Court judge. Oh, you do this. And it's not like a one-upmanship. So, talk to your clients and make sure that this is something that is there. The other point that I wanted to make was there's a compendium, just like how you said, the pipeline leak. There's a lot of discussion on diversity over the past decade or 2 decades even. So Manisha, it's not like there isn't any discussion. There's a lot of discussion. We haven't just come down to domestic discussions because I think we just have other bigger problems, So there's a lot of discussion. So if you there's a compendium of at least 170 arbitrators. So this was a discussion saying, where are the women arbitrators? I want to appoint them. So then people said, we want women arbitrators. Write in, make a list. So there was 170 women arbitrators available internationally to say, here are they. So nobody can then say there are no women arbitrators. So again, I'm saying, so let's make a list. So if you want, we'll put a list of people in Bangalore who are women arbitrators, who are willing and ready and qualified. Say, here are the top 10 construction, here are the top 10 financial, here are the top 10 shareholder disputes, or whatever, IP disputes. If you want, they're available. Then let's see what more we can do. So
Purnima, please do that. We will be very thankful as an institution, right? It's just easy cherry pick for us as well.
So that's what we need to do. But yes, you need to get there. You're not going to get there. Post 20 years of practice, there is a lot of maturity and learning that comes with just going through life, not necessarily the law alone, which will help you get there.
I think another institution which I can probably ask is that you look up for is called Arbitral Women. That was an institution created or an organization created specifically for the purpose of promoting women arbitrator. It's rather unfortunate that the India chapter never picked up much. Yeah. But now during the Delhi Arbitration Weekend or when we do the India ADR Week, we're inviting them specifically to say that we need to have this community of arbitral women in India. So that's another organization that you can look at.
So they actually, arbitral women, what they do the world over is they have arbitral lunch meetings or lunch dates as it's called. Again, it didn't happen in Bangalore, but I think went off very successfully in Bombay and Delhi, where basically a junior arbitration practitioner is mapped. So basically all the senior women will say, we're the people who we're ready to have lunch with younger women, and all the younger women will say, yes, we want to have lunch with a senior woman, and then they map and match, and then we have lunch and give all our gyan and whatever works. So that's another way to build a mentorship thing. I think a couple of years ago, people reached out saying, we're starting it. Would you be willing to have lunch with somebody? I said yes, but lunches never happen. So maybe we can try and do it.
One happens at a time.
No, in
Delhi and Bombay.
Delhi and
successful.
Bombay, they've been happening regularly.
Yes.
I think people reached out here to say, will you participate? But we didn't actually have the lunch. So that's another way to see if we can do that.
So I think for me, the takeaway the biggest takeaway from this is, of course, we're all conscious of the problem, but the solution appears to be quite simple, but somehow we felt like, I think it's just that step of picking up pen and paper, empaneling yourself, applying, writing. Then there is a larger problem that Purnima said, which is the unconscious bias, which is going to be there, but that's a problem that is not just with being an arbitrator. Right? That is going to be there everywhere, and that we're fighting anyway. But I think if we take the first step, goes a long way. I think we're very senior members. But just one, if I can get closing comments after this talk. Arbitration, like Neeti said, actually gives us the amount of flexibility that probably women are looking for, right? That you're not really being summoned or bound by anybody else's diary. But what do you feel is the biggest hurdle? Why are women not putting themselves out there more as arbitrators? We see more mediators, I've mentioned that again, and they're excellent there as mediators. Are we seeing somehow them as mediators, which is more not a decision-making process, but more like a conciliation, or they're great at solving fights, but not really giving a decision, and are we propagating that impression of ourselves by not really pushing ourselves as arbitrators?
So I said as both as a mediator and arbitrator. I think there's definitely, first the mediation community used to always say, we can mediate commercial matters, right? Otherwise the biggest thing was that women, divorce, custody can be mediated, but a shareholders dispute cannot be mediated, a real estate dispute cannot be mediated. Somehow the ask of the mediator seems to be more women driven, but I think they're two completely different skill sets, right? A mediator can be creative beyond the boundaries of the law. I'll give you an example. We had a real estate mediation that just happened between a Singaporean entity and an Indian entity. The solution was that ultimately that they will do next 5 projects in the future together. You can never have that in an arbitrator award. You can't say, you guys now do this and you'll have 5. You have to stick to the boundaries of that dispute. It's very, very case law driven, very, very, it's like writing a judgment, right? You're deciding the rights of parties. Mediation is far more creative. It's what the parties bring to the table. So they're two completely different ideas. You can be an excellent mediator and a terrible arbitrator, and you can be a great arbitrator and a terrible mediator.
Skill sets are different.
Completely different. So, and they have different reasons why they work for different people. The complexities are also different. I believe some things cannot be mediated. People may disagree. Certain kinds of disputes are better suited for arbitration. So I don't think we can really compare them. But for whatever reasons, again, soft skills mediators probably have seen more women for them. There's some excellent male mediators as well. So it works. I think we just need to. I don't think it's going to be an easy road ahead. So it's not going to happen overnight. But by the time in another 10 years, we'll definitely have more women arbitrating. From the time I started the profession, we definitely see better professionalization, right? I mean, we're not relying on whose daughter are you or whose son are you to get a job. We're hoping that we're seeing your CVs and you're being offered a job because you're good at what you do, and you'll progress because you're good at what you do rather than who you're related to. So hopefully those will be the reasons why people get appointed as arbitrators as opposed to other reasons, and it will make a difference.
I agree.
I mean, just again to say the concluding way I'll say is that it's also about non-availability, like Purnima said, right? If you are today counting, if I was to say, give me 15 names of women arbitrator in Bangalore, I can tell you it's not going to be very easy for you to put that list. But if I tell you, give me the 15 names, I'm talking about non-judges, right? It'll be much easier to do that. It's about knowing availability out there and then being able to appoint. If you do not know somebody exists, how do you appoint? That's the biggest problem. So that's why I said I come back to the same thing, that until I'm aware of it, that 15 women in this room can sit as an arbitrator, I can never appoint them. So reaching out is very important.
I think to put that data somehow, somewhere, which is accessible to all.
Yes.
But yes, this is our list of women arbitrators. This is the subject expert. This is the prior experience that they have had already. This is the number of cases wherein they have arbitrated, or this is the litigation experience they have had, and things like that. If there is a compilation of data of this kind initiated by somebody, that's going to be helpful in a large way, I guess. Yes.
Absolutely.
Sorry, one other unconnected point was that while becoming an arbitrator, I think that you asked, why do you want to become an arbitrator? I think for me, it also gives me an insight beyond Bangalore. I don't know if you all don't want that. Because we have so much technology in what we do right now. I'm sitting on 2 arbitrations where they governed by Singapore law. Because the parties are Singaporean, the SIC didn't want a Singaporean appointed, they wanted a non-Singaporean. So I'm sitting there but I'm sitting out of my office and it's all online and one is documentation only. But I get an insight into, how the Singaporeans are thinking, what's happening elsewhere, and, so you compare yourselves. And so therefore you think, what more can we do here? And this is how law firms in Singapore are presenting their papers, or final arguments are only 30 minutes each. What fun. Just different ways of comparing and growing and strengthening our system, so we don't really have to drone on for 4 days of final arguments when we're repeating the same things again and again. Just surprise one day, just say 30 minutes, we'll be done, and say what you want to do. Let's see what happens on the other side. So it just gives you a world somewhere else. It makes us more unified. It also sends a signal to the world outside that we've got some excellent people sitting in different parts of the country. And I think 15 years ago, 20 years ago, people could still say, and I've said this to you, Neeti, many times,
Yes.
that, Indian lawyers were not the best in the world. But I think we can hold our own against anybody, anywhere in the world, right? In fact, we are underpaid. So if we think you can make a career somewhere else, why not? So you can be an arbitrator in an English law dispute or in a Mauritian law dispute, sitting right out of here, or doing it on Teams or Zoom or whatever else, right? So just more variety, if that's what you want.
So to add to that, yeah, please go ahead.
No, I just want to quickly jump in and ask both Neeti and Purnima, how did you become empaneled with SISC? How does one become empaneled with MCI?
She's answered that.
Very simple. Just write an email at registrar@mcia.org.in with your CV, areas of law that you're interested in, what your experience is. That's all that we need from your side.
So go to the SISC website. Again, there's something called a reserve panel, which is where you'll get on first. And then they will test you out a few times. If you make the cut, you'll move to the main panel. But the reserve panel is fun enough in the meantime. But I think wait for 10 years. Don't jump the gun.
And also,
when you're ready.
Some of the institutions have it that if you are already an FCIR, you make it to the empanelment automatically.
Yeah.
So that happens as well.
So is there a process involved in how do they go about testing you? Is it just based on the qualification itself? So you told us that there is a reserved scenario where
You have to send your CV and they will test you out and they will check you out. And I don't know how the SISC decides why they want to staff you on a panel, but I think there is a little bit of word of mouth. There's a little bit of, figuring out what your practice area is, your general experience.
Institutions have their own way of finding things out.
Yeah.
So of course you talk, you get there, what the past experience has been, if they've worked on any arbitration. So let's say Purnima has been an arbitration counsel with you as an arbitrator. We have our own way of reaching out and asking that what the experience has been, not from only one party but both the parties. Then probably the institutions start off by appointing you as a co-arbitrator so that you get an experience of it. Again, like I said, what's your training, what's your experience have been. You may not have sat as an arbitrator at all, but you may have been an arbitration counsel in 100 matters, which is good enough. How much has been domestic work? How much has been international work? If there's a written piece by you, then how well do you write and stuff like that. So I think institutions gather information over a period of time. And then
also, if it's a panel, sometimes, I remember there's only one maritime dispute I've ever sat on as an arbitrator. But there was a friend in Bombay who said, no, we were on that part of having women. And he appointed me. And I was sitting with really two other then QCs from Singapore who've all their 50-year careers have been only on maritime arbitration. And I was on the panel, reading up every day on maritime law just to make sure that I understand what is being said. But I was there because the party said, they wanted me there. So it depends on various reasons. And they didn't find a reason to say, well, we can't have her. So Then there was the other side nominee, and then there was the chairperson.
No, I really say, and I'll echo with what Rahat said, is that right now is the phase where everybody is talking about diversity and wants to prove a point, which I think is good for us. We should take that as an advantage, and if you're trained in those specific areas which are coming up more as an arbitration dispute, then you stand out to get a chance to be an arbitrator much better. So it's about equipping yourself in different areas.
What about your thoughts on having one exam, like we have judiciary exams? For that empanelment of arbitrator, can we have an exam also for that, like a process of one preliminary examination, then another write-up examination, and then another interview process, which will include like all the capabilities of being an arbitrator, and what are your thoughts on that?
So the course that I was talking about, and now I really feel like I get into some kind of a cut from them, which I don't, but I think that if you look at the course that I'm talking about, exactly that's what they do. They train you, they make you sit through an exam, you have to write an award as well. If you qualify in that award writing, only then you can call yourself to be an FCIR, right? Now, it's not only CIR, there are many other institutions who do similar courses, but it's also about the credibility of those courses, right? So that's another thing. So like if a retired judge, so I go back to the example, there was a retired judge from UK who sat through an exam on FCIR and he could not make the cut. And there was a hue and cry in FCIR to say that how could you have a High Court retired judge of UK? He's written judgments all through. With due respect, writing a judgment is very different from writing an award. Conducting an arbitration is very different from conducting a judicial proceeding in the court, and just could not qualify. So pick up a course where though I say it's an investment, we all have invested in a law college as well. This is an investment as well. Invest properly on it. And I'm telling you, when you have an ample experience, at least wait for 10 years. Don't jump the gun. Like Purnima said, there's enough scope right now because we are in that transition period where institutions also want to come out with statistics every year to say we've appointed that many women arbitrators. So take advantage of that. But I must say a disclaimer. As a good lawyer, always a disclaimer. It is also what we do today as women is what's going to lay the foundation for women to come after 20 years. So today you may get an opportunity to sit as an arbitrator, but if you do not do your job well, then you're just cementing the position. See, we told you she's not good enough. We should have gone back to a male arbitrator. So equip yourself, please, very well. You have to lead the way for many more to come.
And also, Manisha just mentioned about the flexibility factor, especially for women when they are considering career choice. I think it's very important that we reflect on this very deeply, because the kind of flexibility that this gives in comparison to being a woman judge, in comparison to being a woman litigator, is so much more that you will be drawn towards. You will be more drawn towards arbitration.
Somehow numbers don't reflect that, right?
Yeah.
That's what's funny, because it looks like an amazing career opportunity.
Absolutely.
I can determine when I want to sit, what I want to do, not work after 7 like you said, so a lot of flexibility.
So that's one consideration, and obviously it's not going to be you alone will be deciding and calling the shots. Since it's party centric, it will be in concurrence with what the parties want. But definitely, that would be one major consideration which all of us could consider when we are taking career decisions. Yes.
There was more questions.
That
was Caesar.
Yes.
Don't say sorry.
Yeah, I realized. I thought I was interrupting, but now I'm justifying myself. Anyway, so you spoke about how women can take advantage of these opportunities that are coming up, where women are being recognized for applying to become an arbitrator, right? That being the case, are there any specific subjects that women usually showcase their expertise to be in? If there are any subjects that are not already, that women usually don't choose, is there any statistics to that extent? Do they specifically go into certain subjects and leave out the others as unexplored?
I hope not.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, and I hope not as well. Yes.
Do what you want to do.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. One thing, if there is some form of gender element there also.
I don't think so. Not that I have come across anything to say that there are more. Maybe maritime definitely is one area where I've not seen much women arbitrator. Yeah,
my one
I think
solo
so.
foray
Yeah.
into that.
Maybe that is one because again,
broken that seal.
yeah. Again, this is systematic because you know that maritime arbitrations today also 90% of them are done by LMAA, London Maritime Arbitration Association, which is an arbitration association but an ad hoc arbitration process. It's a bit complicated that to do it, and most of their members are actually pale male stale arbitrators, which is all are 80 plus male white men who are there. So I think maritime definitely I think there are lesser women arbitrators, but not any other field that I'm aware of. Absolutely not.
Any other questions?
Can you also address the pay structure in comparison to other areas of law? Like how does the pay structure work there?
As an arbitrator. Okay, so in an institutional arbitration, are you saying pay structure with respect to
the
men and
arbitrator.
women or?
No, to the arbitrator generally.
In arbitration, I suppose you would mint money. In short,
They mint money. Okay, arbitrators mint money. That's the reason we're having this discussion as a women arbiters a career path, right? Of course,
Why do you want to become an arbitrator?
mint money.
So it's usually connected to the amount in dispute.
Yes.
Right? So if you go to any arbitral website, you will see what the payment structure is. Right? And if you, for example, if you go to the ICC website and see the amount in dispute is $100 million, and this, you're not going to get your $100 million appointment right on day one. But you put that in and it'll tell you what is the secretariat fees, what's the arbitrator fees, what happens if there's a settlement,
So what
and
we
where it
mention
goes
as arbitrators fees comes entirely to
to
the
the arbitrator.
Yes.
So it will come. So it'll, and if there's a panel, what happens? How much will it get divided? What happens if there's a settlement? What happens if there's a challenge to the arbitrator? If you don't do a good job, you can get thrown out. And I think that would be the worst, most embarrassing to happen if somebody says, we want to change, and then they move, right? So that could also happen. So if
And for
parties
domestic
agree,
arbitrations, look at Schedule 4 of the Arbitration Act.
No, also each institution, even
Has
the,
it, yes.
even the
Perhaps
Karnataka
High Court has
has,
it as
the Delhi has, there's a new Delhi arbitration institution where they're calling for empanelments. Hemant Gupta, former Justice of the Supreme Court.
IIAC.
IIAC, again, I think, but there is a cap on the number of years of experience. I think, again, I'm going for 10, but could be more. So, if you're younger, focused on your arbitration practice right now, the arbitrator thing will happen. As
And
you would
tribal
as
secretary. It's
Yeah,
very
tribal
helpful.
secretary.
That's very essential. That's really helps you to understand how the arbitrators work. And it's something, again, internationally that you can do. It's not only confined to domestic arbitrations.
One more, I'm personally more interested to know about your personal experience doing an ICC internship and other international internships that you mentioned. You've taken a part of, you've been a part of.
Yes, I've had a great time, and I think I've been able to build a career out of it for sure. So I interned with ICC for 6 months in Paris, and you get to work with the secretariat on live cases, put it to the court because ICC scrutinizes the awards as well. So we would sit down and scrutinize the awards written by the cases in the QCs, and then what we thought was not a right way of putting it, right? We do not go into the merits, but it's all on the presentation, not dealing with the issues and all of it. I think it's a great way to learn. I know to be very honest with you, and it's a very open discussion, a lot of people think as to why should I spend so much of money. I do not come from a family where my parents had loads of money to support me on that. I remember when I went for my Miss Viz moot, we had shipped in the first book. 3 of us pooled in the money, stayed in a small house in Vienna, and said that we're gonna do it. ICC as well pays you a good stipend that you can cover your base and all of it. But these are all investments that you today to take benefit of it tomorrow, right? So don't think of it, I spent 20,000 rupees doing a tribunal secretary course. It's been a year, I've not been able to do it. It's eventually going to come. It's getting into your CV. It's eventually you learning a skill, which at some point in time will come back to reap the benefit.
And also probably Bangalore is the best place.
Yes, why not?
No, I think
As like in the sense that you take those initiatives which are already lacking here.
Yeah.
In the sense that you talked about this Delhi lunch, Mumbai lunch, why not initiate Bengaluru lunch?
Okay.
Right? So wherein like you probably the senior practitioners, senior arbitrators could guide and support the younger women who are interested to take up arbitration as a career choice, where they have someone to look forward to, where they could interact freely and then take further guidance, and just not in a in a forum like this, which might not happen very regularly.
That's true.
So being reachable to those who would want your guidance and support, I think that can be taken formally and in a very systemic manner forward.
Sorry, one other very career-centric perspective is that there's now a sort of a mushrooming of ODRs, online dispute resolution mechanisms. Number of companies where the amounts in dispute are lesser, and they are also looking for good arbitrators. So maybe they're not going to look for people with 20 years experience, but maybe looking for younger people. So go check a few of them out. They're going to be online. They're still arbitrations. You're still deciding cases. So check if that would work for you.
Actually, that's a thought process that Nidhi and I were discussing as well. If there are enough number of you who are actually interested in doing a session separately on ODR, because like she said, it is arbitration, but it, I think, offers a larger scope. We can sort of introduce that at the next topic and have a discussion with different people who are doing solely ODR. What is the scope? What is the meaning? I think there's a lot of sensitization required as to what is ODR, how does it work, is it a binding process, these basic questions, as well as a career opportunity in that. So that I think you can speak to Nidhi and let her know if that's something you're seriously interested in, we can organize something along those lines. Any other questions? Thoughts? May not be questions at all.
And we're always reachable. At least those of us in Bangalore are reachable.
So
pointedly.
I just need an excuse to be back, Purnima, so definitely.
She's here for the next few days.
Yes,
so,
I'm here. Definitely.
Catch her up. Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything the three of you wanted to cover that we've not covered? What we needed to cover?
Yes, I think we've got more than probably of that as well. Yes, great.
Okay, thank you. Then if there are no any questions.
Great. Thank you so much. We still have them captive, hostage for a few more minutes, maybe another half an hour if you want to attack them and get their attention.
Attack them.
Attack them. And get their attention or talk to them one-on-one. Yeah. Thank you so much. I hope this was informative. If you want to have any further sessions, please feel free to reach out. You can email chavadiforum@gmail.com, call me, email me, whatever, yeah, and we'll take it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.